All right, men, welcome to today's episode of Strong Men, Strong Marriages. I have a special guest today, Cathy Himlin. So, really excited for today's episode. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist, also a clinical counselor, right? Um, and works in well, I'll have her introduce herself, but basically just helps parents, a lot of dads who are going through divorce and kind of struggling with their children through that. So yeah, I just thought it would be really useful. A lot of guys that come into the program, they're facing a divorce, and while we do everything we can to help the marriage stay together, sometimes the guys I'm working with, sometimes the wife still files, right? And you can't stop her from filing, and so sometimes you have to deal with a divorce, and guys are always interested, and I'm always interested in kind of helping them to understand, okay, how do I maintain good relationship with my kids after that. So yeah, if you can just kind of introduce yourself a little bit and what you
Sure,
do, that'd be great.
sure. I'm Cathy Himlin, of course. Thank you, Mike. Happy to be here. Um, what I am is, and there might be a trash truck, and I'm sorry, I know this is recording, but it's coming. As you said, I'm a family therapist. I've worked in couples therapy, child therapy, individual therapy, and what I've started specializing in the last 10 years or so is court-involved family therapy. So I work with the highest conflict divorces or custody disputes you can imagine. And in these cases, a lot of times we have a kid who rejects one of the parents. The majority of the people that get rejected are my fathers that are in the case. So in the case that I'm working on, and the moms tend to be the custodial parents or the primary caretakers at the very least. And for some reason, the kids are rejecting them. So I work with these dads. Sometimes moms are in that situation too, but I work with the dads mainly to do things that are in control for what they're in control of, as opposed to the biggest thing I see is they point blame at their co-parent and they think there's parental alienation. That's a phrase that's out there happening. In other words, their co-parent is alienating their child from them. And that may be true. There may be some facets of that happening or some parts, but there's a lot more to it. It's not black and white. So that's what I do, a lot of education. Then we work with attachment parenting and I teach them how to reach their child in a way that empowers them, that they actually do have control over some of what's going on, as opposed to, being mad at their co-parent and then taking it out on their kid when they finally get to see their kiddo, or being really anxious, or hearing your child say something that sounds like their co-parent and then having a reaction. And what ends up happening is they end up pushing their child farther away instead of doing things to recognize this child's just caught in the middle and they need to set aside their anger, frustration, the court over here in another room, and let's go over here with your child and focus on what they need. What do they need, to build this relationship back?
Yeah,
That's what I do.
awesome. So yeah, when you say a child's rejecting the parent, like what does that look like?
It could look like a lot of things. They would say maybe, I don't want to go over to dad's house right
Hmm.
now, or I'm never going to see you again. I'm done with you. I've given you all these tries, literally cutting them off. I've even seen children go and illegally change their names on school programs,
Hmm.
graduation materials, and things because they want to completely cut this person out of their life, which
Hmm.
is so extreme. A lot of the cases I'm on, there isn't even any abuse involved. So I'm not talking about heavy domestic violence cases. I'm talking about there's been maybe some upset in the family, of course, because they're splitting up. But children are just completely saying, no, I don't have to go. And they're saying, I get to choose, which is new to me as a
Hmm.
therapist.
Yeah.
It's been sort of newish and worse since COVID 2020.
Is so kind of age range on that, is that typically more kind of teenagers or is that more younger kids or a mix?
It's a mix. It used to be before 2020. I swear it's gotten bad, worse than it was. It used to be, it was mainly, middle schoolers, teenagers, especially that age range between 10 and 12 and 14 is one of the toughest age ranges around when puberty happens. When they get to be 16, maybe they can be like that, but I can find some older teenagers a little bit more reasonable. But you know what? It's getting younger. Like I've got some 7 year olds that are saying no. I'm like, I get to choose. So there's a lot of reasons why kids do that. And
Mm.
it may have nothing to do with the co-parent. And that's what I look at with people too. So I can help, just sort of give them a reality test of let's stop having all this, you know, negative energy go towards your co-parent because we're talking about your kiddo here. There's other things we can look at.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, let's say you've got a dad in that situation where, yeah, it's like, okay, hey, it's my weekend. He's looking forward to it. And then the kid's like, no, I'm not coming. I don't want to see you. Like, yeah, what's the dad supposed to do in that situation?
Right. I mean, a lot of what I teach is, again, attachment parenting. And so they need to acknowledge the feelings and acknowledge that they don't want to come over for some reason, and then try to figure out if they can't do it on their own. I suggest they get a family therapist who understands court dynamics.
Mm,
Um, but to figure out, like, what is it? Why? Well, maybe it's because they have a party that weekend, and they don't think dad will take them. Or maybe it's because, mom is taking them to a special, amusement park. I mean, there's so many things that could be going on. Or maybe they just say, I don't like how you cook. I've had that happen so many
hmm,
times. So then they have an opportunity, if they can understand the why, if they can find one, because sometimes we have a hard time finding one. It's just a feeling. They might help by being empathetic with the child for whatever it is they're needing that they don't feel like they're getting from their dad. Um, Even if it's just going to the grocery store and letting them pick out the foods they want, within reason, of course, and them cooking a meal together. I mean, things like that could really ease some of this stuff. But what happens is men sometimes, or just, I keep saying men, but fathers or
yeah.
whoever, dads, they power struggle with a kiddo at that point. Well, you have to go with me.
Yeah.
You show some respect. If that comes out, oof, they've lost.
Mm,
That's the ultimate power struggle loss. Because when you're trying to get a kid to show respect and you tell them they have to show you respect, that is an immediate power struggle and they're going to rebel,
mm,
especially teenagers. No, I don't have to. I don't want to. And then they'll back up and then you've just pushed your kid further away. But I get why people do that, because parents get very frustrated and they get desperate, because the second a kid tries to, or their kiddo tries to reject them, or says something like that, it's almost like, I'm never going to see my kid again. They're just going way down in the future of the
yeah.
worst case scenario. They get really anxious and they get desperate and they start getting louder sometimes, or
Mm,
more forceful about things, because they're wanting to hold on to their kid, because the other parent's taking that child away. And that's the perception. So I would suggest, either getting in and getting some new tools on how to reach a child who's rejecting. Like, I have a parenting class that talks about that specifically. Like, I teach people how to manage this. It's based on stage 2 of what my court involved family therapy is. Finding a family therapist to bring that child in to explore, what is that child not telling you? Or maybe even consult with your attorney, like, what's going on in the other house? Are things being planned on your time? Because
yeah.
that is a thing, and that needs to stop. And usually attorneys or the court can help with that type of thing.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
a
So,
lot of
yeah.
things.
Yeah. So that makes sense that especially if there's like a court order and like, hey, this is the deal. This is your weekend. This is your weekend. And then, yeah, but mom's like, oh, let's go to the amusement park. Then, um, yeah, that probably needs to stop. Um, but like what are some of the so let's say you've got a dad who kind of wants to do this, and because I could definitely see that, right? Your kid's
Mhm.
like, I'm not coming. You're like, yeah, you are. Like, this is your time. Like, let's go. "Ah, I don't want to." He's freaking out, and you're like kind of dragging him along, um or her along. But yeah, like what um if like just let's pretend I'm that kid, and you're the dad in this case, so if I'm like, oh, like, no, I don't want to go, like, it's my choice, I don't want to go with you today, like what would you respond to that?
Well, I would say a few things as the dad. I would go, you know what? I get it. I'm curious. Like, what is it, that a reason why you don't want to go? And then try to figure out what that is. I just
Yeah,
don't want to. If they say I
yeah,
don't want to,
yeah,
then I don't mean to be you too, but here
yeah.
I am.
That's what I was gonna say.
So sorry. Take your part away. Um, and I would say, well, I understand maybe why you don't want to go. Maybe it's hard for you to change homes a lot. Like, that's rough. And maybe we haven't established a routine yet, and maybe we need to talk about some stuff that you want to do with me over in my house, like foods you want, activities you want. What would help you feel more comfortable at my house? Because
Mm,
generally, men tend to move out, not always, but they move out of the
sure.
family home, and the child just wants to be in that home they've always been in.
Yeah.
So I would engage in a curiosity level,
Yeah.
and really being positive and not defensive, like really, because sometimes it's a little bit of a power push. They want to see if they can get away with telling their dad they don't have to go to their house.
Right.
So if
Right.
you handle it gently, then you might actually get something from that
Yeah.
you know
Nice.
so be really
So,
curious.
yeah. So you mentioned one of the things I talk to guys about is like if someone doesn't want to share, sometimes like taking a guess helps them open up, kind of like you were saying. So,
Yes.
like so what are kind of some of the more common reasons? So you just said a big one that maybe it's just kind of the routine element of, hey, like I know this is a different environment. I know that's uncomfortable, and
Right.
what are some things we can maybe do? Um, what have you seen as other common reasons why? You mentioned like the food one, which I mean that's a pretty easy fix, right? Um, but like, what are some of the other common ones that kids maybe aren't quite so ready to express, but that you've seen are kind of there that a dad could kind of
Sure.
like guess at?
Sure. I don't get to see my friends. You don't live near my school
Mm,
anymore. You've taken me from my friends. That's a common one.
sure.
Another one is I don't like the pillow you have in my bed. I don't like
Hmm,
the sheets. I don't have my stuffy that I want, like the stuffed animal. So there's things like that. The sense of I want to be in the same place and your place is different. So
yeah.
there's that a lot. One of the big ones, there's two big ones though, that there's not a lot you can do except to address it if you can get at it either in therapy or if a dad can get at this, is children just sometimes, given this scenario though, if the mom in the situation is a stay-at-home mom and the dad's been, working full-time plus, then when you think about the split of time, it's really the mom may have 80 to 90% of time with his kid technically during the week, right? So when you split it to a 50-50 custody, I don't want to get into like what I think about percentages because I think really we need to look at what the kiddo's needing. Um, if that's taken like immediately, like the court orders 50-50, and that's great. I mean, everyone's entitled to have time with their kid, and the child especially is entitled to have time with both parents. Um, However, if you do it like immediately, then they're rebelling against, they're not having a chance to adjust. There needs to be a ramping up period if that's going to happen.
Mm,
If they're used to being around mom every single day, and she's the one who picks them up from school, she's the one who gives them breakfast, and she's the one who takes them to the activities every day, then it's going to be a real jerk on their system, right? They're not going to be
sure.
able, they need time to adjust. So that's one that I see where they're having feeling like a sense of loss of routine and of they're not seeing their other parent as much. I mean, that's huge. Um, and I was thinking of the other one I had two. Maybe I just said those two together. Oh shoot. Oh yeah, here's the other one. Um, Kids are wired young, and I've even noticed it up through teenage that everything's in right or wrong mode, right? You're either right or you're wrong. They're very black and white. So when two parents split up, somebody's got to be wrong. And if
Mm,
they stay with the one parent in the family home and one person leaves, which is usually a dad tends to leave the home and leave I mean, because men have been so generous in a lot of the cases I've been on. They're giving the home away, they're giving all these things to the more time because they want the child to be taken care of. But what happens is that gives the message that when they leave the home, and that means they left. I've had kids get mad and think that the dad didn't love the child anymore because they left the home.
yeah.
And that's so ridiculous, right? Logically, as somebody has to leave, right? It's rare that you would find, or I have never met a case where both parents are still in the home. I don't know that that's even healthy once they've been split up. So you've got all these symbolic things happening, and then you've got a child that's wired for right or wrong. So if everything's okay with mom over here, then dad must be wrong. And if
Mm,
dad's wrong, then something must have happened. Depending on the age, they'll do this. Then what did dad do wrong? And I'm scared of dad. Now I might need to be scared of dad. And I've literally watched children do this, and they'll do
mm,
it on their own without help from the co parent.
mm,
But there's always something going on because the kids are exposed to all the stress from both parents, right? And
Yeah.
so they're trying to just, in their little brains, trying to make sense of what's going on. And sometimes they'll just draw a line. I'm staying here, family home. Nothing bad's ever happened here, but he left and he seems a little angry once in a while and on edge. So there must be something wrong there. It could be that simple.
Mm.
That's where family therapy is very important, or at least taking on some other tools for parenting that'll be less combative and get you out of that power struggle mode. You don't want to do this with your kid, especially in the middle of a custody dispute of some sort.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned a few times like getting those tools. So it sounds like one of the big ones is like when you see that power struggle, instead of like going into that, just kind of like taking a more curiosity approach, like, hey, tell me what's going on. You seem frustrated about that. Um, yeah, what are some of the other kind of main tools you'd say would be useful?
Sure. I mean, one of the big things that I teach, and it's based on emotion focused family therapy. Not to get all nerdy on you, but as opposed to emotional focused therapy, which is a Sue Johnson model.
Yeah.
Emotion focused family therapy is a Della Francis model, and that's an attachment based family therapy where we teach emotion coaching. And again, not to get all nerded out on this, but that's based on Gottman's emotion coaching. So it's really cool because we I teach, like for what I do, teach them how to validate emotions. It doesn't mean you have to agree because we deal with children having these, what we call narratives that are wrong. They've learned it or they've thought it or they've got it from some other side of the family. Maybe that's happened or on the blacktop with other kids. They think something's going to happen. So we go for the emotions first. If you can address the emotions and you validate how they're feeling, no matter what they're saying, then what that does is that helps them feel like they're being heard, listened to, and therefore that you care about them. So when we argue about what kids are saying and say, no, you should be coming with me. What are you talking about? You've just sort of steamrolled over their emotional
Mm.
experience. There's something going on there. We need to figure out why. And a lot of my work as a family therapist in court involved cases, I spend several sessions up to 5+ with a kid alone before I even put the parent and the child together because I need to understand why they're rejecting the parent.
Yeah.
And then during that time, I spend time with the dad or the parent, depending on who it is, usually dads, like I said, teaching them the tools on how to reach them through their emotions. So
Mm.
I teach them how in the emotion coaching model, if you want me, do you want me to go into that?
Yeah.
Maybe too deep. Okay. So we teach a validating statement. So we acknowledge just one little thing, like, I get why you don't want to come over because you want to see your friends. And then we do three becauses, and we give three pieces of evidence. I can do this, three. Um, because you really miss your friends when you don't get to spend time with them. Because it feels weird coming over to my house and your friends aren't in the neighborhood anymore. Because you just maybe this whole thing between mom and I aren't are is stressing you out. I get it. I get it. So I really understand and I really want you to have. Now we're going to do an emotional support statement. There's a whole formula to this. I really understand where you're coming from and I want to help out and I'm here for you and I want a relationship too. Then we're going to go into um, practical problem solving mode here, that where we usually jump to, by the way, as parents. We go straight into problem solving because
Mhm.
we have to open the door with emotions first and go down in problem solving and go, hey, what if we set up a time? Here's an example. Would this help? What if we set up a time with one of your friends and they can come over to my house? What if we do that? Or anything else you think. And instead of telling them what you're going to do to solve the problem, you get their buy in. You maybe make some suggestions and ask them what they think because you want them to feel heard. You want your children to have a voice, not equal decision making. That's so different, but they
Right.
need to feel like they're being heard. And that usually breaks through some of the milder cases if parents can do that.
Mm.
So that's what I teach.
Yeah,
Leaning
nice.
into emotions, don't avoid them, right? We want to lean into all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of coming back to that example of going to pick up the kid, and you're like, no, I don't want to go with you, right? So then it would just be like, well, hey, you know, tell me more, or, I'm
Mhm.
interested why, what are you nervous about? Is it maybe things aren't the same there? Is it maybe you're missing your friends? Tell me
Right,
what's going on, right? And then
right.
they're like, oh, it's because of my friends. Then you're like, okay, yeah, it makes sense because yeah, you miss them, it's unfamiliar, you like being around people. Um, and then the summary, then he said like the next part, so like the three becauses and then the summary.
Is an emotional support statement. So you sort of re up or show them how you really care. You can reassure them, give them a hug. I didn't
Hmm,
even offer that, but just a sort of a reassurance. Hey, I get it. I'm right there with you. I
yeah,
get it. I could see why that would be like that, and I want to help you with that. And then go
got
into
it,
practical support mode. And
got it.
that's when you go into problem solving, where you can hear from them. Hey, what do you think we can do to make this better? You could just
Yeah,
start with that. Oh, I don't know. Then you say, well, what do you think about this?
yeah, yeah,
But you want them to have an opportunity to be involved.
yeah,
I mean, it took me a year or so to be able to do this model and to teach this model, so I don't expect people to get this today,
yeah,
but it's just an idea. You could see how it works.
yeah, yeah. So kind of, yeah, get curious. Once you get like some kind of reason, okay, yeah, like three becauses, three reasons why,
Right.
emotional support statement, meaning like just kind of reiteration of understanding, I think is a good way to put that. Yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. But yeah, also being like, I understand and I'm with you, right? I'm
Right.
on your team and
Right.
I'm interested in you. And then, yeah, like, what's my ideas? What can we do about this? So,
Exactly.
what if, so let's say you do that, right? And then the kid's like, no, I'm not going, but it's your day, right?
Right.
Like, what do you recommend then?
I recommend trying to negotiate at that point. I mean, still, if you've hit a wall and they won't tell you what, you know,
Yeah.
won't tell you what's going on, and it's just maybe they're in a mood, maybe they've had a bad day, I don't know, and they want to try out their power struggle boots and they're just pulling it, and now they can because they don't have to go. They got two choices of homes to go to. um I might negotiate and say, what if we just go out and get lunch or get after school snack, or what if we just go to the park? It really depends on the age. What if we go shopping? Not that I'm saying bribe them by buying them things, but it's just try to get them out of that mode because they're sort of stuck in that, right? If they can't tell you, then maybe it's nothing more than they're just stuck. So try to shift gears, try to deflect, try to get them not I never say, I don't mean deflect like ignore emotions, but you've already tried that. Try to sort of like when you have a baby and you distract them with something else. So they're going for the light socket. You go, hey, look at this shiny toy. And they come over to the toy instead of
Hmm.
saying no, right? You don't do that if you can help it, right? It's not
Right.
that we don't do that because we get freaked out if we see your light socket should be covered anyways with a baby. That's just the if your fingers going towards the light socket, you want to you want to distract them because then that's not engaging. It doesn't scare them, doesn't upset them, it doesn't get the whole situation emotionally charged. So if you could just say, hey, want to help me find some things for dinner, or you want to go to lunch again, or I don't know, anything like that that's a distraction. Here, why don't you just let me drive you to karate or drive you to dance? I could do that, and maybe we can catch some dinner and we'll see how you're feeling after that.
Yeah.
So try to push the envelope without locking heads with them.
Right.
I mean, try anything like that. But what I see men do, especially men, well, I do see women do this too, but I do work with men mostly. Like I said, I probably said that 10 times, sorry. They tend to give up really easy. They just feel defeated. And
Yeah.
it makes so much sense why they feel defeated because it's like they feel powerless. How do they get their kid to go with them? They've got a kid that's like, no, I won't go. And you can't like pick up a baby and put them in their car seat. You're talking like a 10, 12,
Right.
16-year-old child that is too big to do that.
Yeah.
So you got to get really creative.
Yeah. So yeah, if they're still refusing, then just like try to, yeah, think of something, right?
Yeah,
Something
right.
small or something that.
And if it's, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just so like I'm just kind of trying to like picture a guy in this situation where he's trying these things and he's doing the understanding, and the kid just won't open up. It's just like super not gonna do it, not willing to come, but like legally it's his day, right?
Sure.
And so um yeah, and you're like offering things. Well, can we go for a drive? Can we do this? Can we do that? No, 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 no. Like, yeah, what do you do then? It's just kind of like, well, maybe next time, or
Right. Well, It depends, and I would work out with somebody personally what they do. It depends on like the context of the case, like what's
Hmm.
happened in the case, what's going on with this kiddo. There's a lot of nuances in this that it would be hard for me to give a general answer because every family
Sure.
is different. But you have to sort of gauge your kiddo. I don't know if it's a what we call a super feeler that's very sensitive to everyone's emotions and just maybe having a bad day. Maybe they got bullied at school and they don't want to tell you and they're just having a bad day. So if you can't get anywhere and you've hit a wall, what I would suggest is that you say, you know what, maybe now's not a good time. I'd really like to see you this weekend. How about if I check back later on tonight, or maybe I could check with you in the morning. We could plan something really fun to do. Maybe right now you're just too tired and you want to just go to your mom's house. I
Yeah.
get it, and that's fine. And you can emotion coach them again and
Hmm.
show up for them again emotionally, right? Validate them and say, it's okay. I love you. And I'll check in with you tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can try that approach, but if you start hitting walls a lot, you don't want to give it too much time before
Right.
you engage in family therapy or get
Sure.
some help from someone because
Yeah.
something's going on, right? That's stopping this kiddo, and it may not be apparent in that moment, you
Yeah.
know, because
Yeah.
they have what's called split loyalty. So sometimes kids, there's another reason. Sometimes kids take sides with parents just because, again, in black and white thinking, they have to. Maybe they have, a parent over here, the co-parent, who is crying all the time and missing them, and they don't want to see their mom cry, when they go to dad's, and mom's expressed how much she misses them when they're gone. Like there may be something like that going on. So
Sure.
that is not a power struggle. That's a kid caught in the middle in this really terrible emotional quagmire of trying to caretake a parent over here that's really being too codependent on this child. And this
Yeah.
happens sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Because
So
I could definitely see something like that happening where,
yeah,
yeah, mom, intentionally or not, is kind of like guilting the kids into wanting to be there. Um,
I call that leaking. I call it leaking because it's rare
mm,
that I see it intentional, just so you
yeah.
know. In my cases, I see parents who are genuinely, like I talked about the loss that a child would feel in a custody, split when they're going to go from 80% to 50 with the other parent. The parent over here that's had this child the majority of the time, if it's in this situation, they're going through grief and
Yeah.
loss. And they truly are missing this kiddo, and they're not even thinking about how it's impacting their child because they're all caught up in their own stuff.
Yeah.
And it could be anxiety, it could be abandonment, it could really be, and it's usually what happens with these co-parents over here. They're kicking back to something in their childhood that's triggering them. So there's trauma involved.
Mm,
So I would say that the majority of my cases, and that's the problem on this side of the fence over here with parents that are being rejected, they're assuming that this parent over here is just pulling that kid away, but there could be so many more complicated reasons.
yeah.
And when someone's in the middle of a trauma response from their past, they're not even aware how they're impacting a kid.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it's not intentional. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying there isn't people that do things intentional. There is
Sure.
that too. But that's the big thing that I teach them because then that helps bring their anger and frustration level down.
Yeah.
If I could help them have a teeny bit of compassion for their co parent, there would be a lot less stress in the family,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Um, so if and I imagine like with some of these cases, like family therapy is court ordered or like that's like part of the deal with it, which would be good. But if it's not, and like a guy notices his wife doing that, and like maybe he listens to this podcast, it's like, okay, yeah, that's probably like more of a trauma thing, but it is impacting, and like this is what's happening for sure. Like he kind of bring that up to her. Um, and say like, hey, like I think this maybe some of this is going on. Then like would it be good for him to recommend she go to therapy or recommend you go together? Like what would
Right. Well, there is co-parenting therapy. I don't, and I know that that works sometimes or a lot of times. I don't have a lot of experience with it because I really do more of the family.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, if they're talking, that probably would work. It may off-put the other parent, but you can, if you're involved legally, you can go to your attorney and say, this is going on, and we need to somehow what I do when I'm the therapist and I see that going on, because I can work with the whole family, but just I don't put the two parents together when I'm doing the family therapy or the kiddo, is I go to that parent over there and I go, hey, I've noticed that this is happening. I need you to come in with me and the kid. So then I bring in that parent. I need you to give this child permission that they're allowed to go to the dad's house, that you are encouraging this relationship with dad,
Yeah,
because something's happening in your house to give that message that you're not something's going on. And I go, I'm not accusing you of doing anything on purpose, but some message is getting felt in here, and sometimes I can't even tell, but I can usually pick up that something like that's happening. I just don't know exactly what the detail is, and that helps. But we wouldn't be getting, as in we, not me, but they wouldn't be getting into a divorce situation or a custody dispute if there wasn't like lack of communication to begin with. So
sure.
generally, even in good marriages, you can have a conversation like that. But if you have the privilege of having a co-parenting relationship already, then sure, have a conversation with them. But the majority of the ones I deal with, like I said, are high conflict. So
Right.
they can't talk to each other. And that's part of why it's high conflict, is the communication broke down a long time ago and they're just
Sure.
fighting. They're
Yeah.
just fighting, or they're panicking, or
Yeah.
they're both
Yeah.
fighting and
Yeah, I imagine
panicking.
they
What
go
can I say?
together.
Make up a word.
Very good. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's really helpful for, definitely as far as going through a divorce, but also just like those skills you were mentioning, great for even if you're not divorce, just like being able to get into that, emotional support of your kids. Because I'm thinking, so I have my oldest is 17 right now. Then we got, 15, 13. And like definitely we have those like power struggle moments, like about a lot of different things. But yeah, I like that idea of, okay, yeah, you don't want to like do your cleaning right now. I get that because you'd rather do XYZ, whatever. Like, I'm with you. And like, this stuff does need to be done. So, like, let's figure something out. Um,
And with chores, but go ahead. I could tell you an idea of
oh,
how
go
we
ahead.
can
Yeah.
use. So with chores, what I always say, especially with teenagers, you want to give them as much control as you can. So instead of telling them you're responsible for taking the trash out every day, say, here's a list of things the family needs done. Can you pick one? Can
Yeah.
you make sure it's done by this time? And if you have to enforce rules on them, say, you will earn your screen time when this is done.
Yeah.
That's it. And no reminders, nothing. The the internet is magically off for the day until something happens. I mean, we want to be, not engaging these power struggles as much as we can. Even intact families, you want to do this. It's much more effective, because it doesn't feel good as a parent to just lose it, like get upset or frustrated or even angry and shout. I mean, I don't know many parents that don't get to that point. We're human. That kids can get under our skin and we can get triggered. They know our buttons. They don't really know our buttons consciously, but it's a dynamic that happens in families. So
Yeah.
yeah, whatever you can do to like prevent that. And and then, because it's normal for teenagers, like this is their developmental stage. They need I call, when I work with them, I go, it's just like you're just like a 2-year-old. I do myself, except now you're in an almost adult body. So that's the same. It's the
Mm,
same thing. They'll have temper tantrums in their own way, and
yeah.
they'll say no to you, and they'll say, don't tell me what to do. That's the same as a 2-year-old going, I here, give me that pen, I'll do myself. And then they scribble this thing.
Yeah.
you know so it's normal. If you realize that's normal, that's their way of pushing away from you, because they're getting independence, they're moving towards adulthood. Then that, if you put that in that perspective and keep that in your mind, you'll be less than, you know chance of being engaged in power struggles with them.
Yeah.
They're supposed to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of on the along a similar line. So, if let's say a dad, whether divorced or just like in their you know marriage right now, they've got a kid or a wife that kind of doesn't A lot of guys last is how do I get my wife to open up more, or or how do I get my kids to open up more? I ask them questions. It's always one word answers. Um, so yeah, like what would you recommend for that? Because like guys want this, they want to have more like a deeper relationship with their wife, with their kids, but they're
Sure.
like, man, I'm asking them stuff. They just don't want to say anything. Just you feel kind of stuck. Oh, like what's going on? Nothing. What, but what are you
Right.
looking forward to? Nothing. I don't care. Like,
But
so,
and teenagers do that. That's normal. Like they want their space. And it's similar to spouses with wives. I mean, I think that paying attention, I always talk about, going to the child's world, paying attention to what they're interested in, trying to
mm,
engage them in that. Like I knew a mom who was having a hard time reaching a kiddo or, parent, doesn't matter if mom, dad. And they at the time found that Minecraft was a big thing. So they got a call name and they went in and played Minecraft with their kid and they went into their world and they had this great conversation over, hoeing carrots and fighting off the monsters or building the buildings or whatever, and they did that. So what I would recommend is instead of asking like, how was your day? Say, try to figure out what they like. Like, ooh, if they like math, hey, did you learn anything really cool in math today?
mm,
If they like recess, like what sport did you guys do today? That type of thing. Like be really specific and really try to step into where they're at. If they're into music, try to learn about their music. You probably should know what their music is anyways, because there's a lot of music they probably shouldn't be listening to. But pay attention to like the genre of music they like if they like to dance, the sports, like I said, or anything, their friends, learn their lingo. Like understand like what some of these words mean. Like I can't even remember. You probably are more familiar. My child's a little bit older. Um, like what is it, facts or something? I don't want to sit here and embarrass myself in front of the old lady, but whatever, like what does that mean? Or that
yeah,
tracks, facts, tracks. I don't know. There's all
yeah,
these funny little lingos. Like just try to get in there and start showing interest in them
right.
because they don't feel like teenagers especially, they don't feel like we notice them. And the
Mm,
biggest complaint I get when I'm doing individual therapy with like middle schoolers up, my parents don't care what I think, they don't even know what I think, and they don't take me seriously.
mm,
So asking their opinion on things like, hey, we're about ready to paint the living room beige. I don't know why I'm saying that. But what do you think? Do you think this would be a good color? Do you think blue would be a good color? I mean, this may sound silly to some of your listeners, but seriously, try to see if they have an opinion on something that isn't even like high stakes, no low
yeah.
stakes stuff. Like, hey, every Sunday you have three kids. Every Sunday each kid has a rule like a chance to pick what dinner is.
Mm,
They just get to do it, they get to call it. You know what I mean? So they
yeah.
sort of feel like things like that, little things like that might help. And then just being engaged in like in that moment, like if they're reading a book, hey, you want to tell me a little bit about that book you're reading? I'm really interested in it.
Yeah.
As opposed to, how was your day?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that. And kind of same with your wife, kind of notice what she's interested in or spending time on and
Yes.
can have her tell you about that versus like a more general, like what'd you do or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of conversation starters out there. I'm not a fan of a lot of them, but it might start to help. But if you notice, like, I can't think of anything in particular, I'm gonna sit here and be all feminine on you, like if they like quilting. A lot of churches have like quilting groups, right? I don't know why I'm even going here.
Uh,
Ask her about that. I don't know.
yeah.
Ask her about what her favorite music is and what she's been listening to today. Like, what's maybe something you've always wanted to do with me that we never get to do because of the kids, or we never get time
Mm,
away. We seem to always be busy. What would be like if you could wave a magic wand, that magic question, what would you change in our
mm,
marriage?
yeah.
I don't know. Saying stuff like that. Generally, women will talk a lot if you get them to open up, but they may not feel like that you're interested.
Yeah.
And so they want to see that you're genuinely showing interest, not just, oh yeah, great, you saw Sally the other day and you went to this your this lunch place. Well, it happened to be her best friend who needed some support and she went to her favorite restaurant with her friend. So knowing those little details, and you could talk about, wow, how's your friend doing? I noticed you went with your, you told me about how you went with your friend and she's going through a hard time and you had to go to your favorite restaurant. Oh my gosh, what did you order? See the difference
Yeah.
between, like, you're invested in what they're doing. You're really like stepping into their world. That's why I use that language when I'm teaching my parenting class too.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. It's a good, um, yeah, good way um, to approach it. Nice. Well, great. Well, that's been awesome. Lots of great tips, great ideas, both, and really like the principles are the same. And this is why I teach in my program too. It's like, listen, like even if it goes through to a divorce, like you need to learn how to manage your own thoughts and emotions well, communicate well, either way, because if you have kids, you're gonna be attached to this woman forever,
Yeah.
as long as you have kids. So but really great tips as far as like if the kid is kind of not wanting to be around you, like during a divorce. Awesome. So yeah, thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Oh, sure. I always forget to say these things. Himlinconsulting.com. So Himlin Consulting. And on there, I have resources. I post all the podcasts I've been on there, and I have a newsletter on there. I have a parenting class I offer that teaches all of this. And it's basically reconnecting with your child, is I think I call it that. I've changed the name several times. So yeah, there's some other free resources on there.
Awesome. All right. So himlinconsulting.com. So yeah, whether you're going through a divorce, specifically Cathy works with that. But yeah, even if you're not and you just want a better connection with your kids, with the parenting course would be great, sounds like. And so excellent. All right. Well, hey, thanks so much for being on, Cathy. Really appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Mike.
And yeah, so stay strong, man, and we will see you next episode.